The historicity of Jesus. Yeah, what's going on, party people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Happy Friday. We made it through another work week, and we gotta praise God for that. And of course, we gotta say what's up to the party people in the chat. We got Bodega Lady D New on the check-in. We got please forgive me if I say this wrong. Enye Kenya. We got the indullible, the uncomparable, Natu D2, chilling. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not yet already, please like, share, and subscribe. Please share this link to your prospective quadrants of Al Gore's internet. All right. And if you like how it goes down with the BK, you can show your appreciation, showing your support via the PayPal link that's put on top of the chat. Or if you'd like to be a monthly supporter of BK, you could become a patron where you get an assortment of goodies to enhance your personal Bible study. And I am here with a very dear friend, partner in the gospel, big dog, grand dragon of the UA, as some have called him in the past. Of course, I'm talking about none other than Mr. True ID, Adam Coleman. What's going on, sir?
Hey, what's happening with you, bro? What's good with you, man? One more again at
Man,
it, bro.
one more again. It's funny you should say one more again. We was talking behind the scenes. You know, me and Adam been doing this for about 5 years now, guys. I don't know if you realize about 5 years now.
That is crazy,
you know what I mean?
bro. Flies, man, when you cutting up these pseudos, bro. Like
man, ever since we had that meeting in New York, man. Ever since that New York, man, it's like it's been on and popping ever since, man. So
well, you know I'm a big fan of it, and I appreciate, everything that you bring to the game. You're a master of a million slides. I mean, you know how you do. You know what I mean? Just the slides be like daggers, you know what I mean? 36 chamber style. So I always appreciate it. You know how we get a chance to, get down, man, and bring people truth, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Survivor, I appreciate it. I'm trying to step my game up. Trying to do a little something out here. Trying to step it up a little bit. Appreciate that.
There you go. Absolutely. And one of the more consistent, I mean, a lot of things have changed. Like, your like lighting, cameras. There's been plenty of books that have been written and published. Conferences, we've seen the explosion of urban apologetic conferences, and so many things have changed, but some things remain the same. And one of the things that remain the same is our good friend JABARI OSAZE. Old faithful. Always count on him. And recently, he had even before that, he threw the gauntlet down, wanting a debate with some of us on the historicity of Jesus. And one of the names that was mentioned was our good friend, Pastor Bennett. Body bag, as we like to call him in the UA. Absolutely. So him and two other pastors got on Sonetta not too long ago, and they had a discussion with JABARI. And Pastor Bennett doesn't have the time to debate him because he's working on his master's. And good luck and God bless to Pastor Bennett with his master's degree. That's super dope. But they had a conversation, so it technically wasn't a debate, but they had a discussion, and some things were said. And me and Adam would like to give some commentary on a few of these moments that occurred. So before we could go into it, Adam, you have any preliminary thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
Actually, one thing that just comes to mind, man. I just want to give an extra shout out to Pastor Bennett, because I think if you listen to Pastor Bennett, he does an excellent job of taking this apologetics material and communicating it in a relatable way. Yeah, he does a great job, particularly with that the Sonetta audience. You know, I think he's very captivating. You know, he always carries himself in a respectful manner, but he's bold with it. And I just really appreciate what he brings to the game, man. So, you know, it just, you know, I think even in this conversation that we're doing a commentary on here, I think that really shines through, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with that, sir, if you could pull up the video.
Yes, sir.
We could get to it. Peace to JT Parker. We got the real American Phil Fox in the building. We got Christy Thomas in the building. We got Water Blue in the building. What's going on? Frugal Survivor. You know what I mean? We got, yeah, let's pack it in, y'all. We're gonna have a good time tonight. Good time.
So I think I got it queued up. Can you see that?
Yeah. You can always go down to the transcript. Click down, like scroll down below the video.
All right. Oh.
Just go below the video so you can make it easier for you. Just go below, scroll down.
Am I still scrolling?
See where it says more. We see where it says more. Click them where it says more on the no. The blue, the highlighted blue stuff. Yeah, click that. You should scroll all the way down. You should see a button that says transcript. Scroll all the way down. There you go.
Wow. Okay.
Click that. Right now, the chat will go away, and now you're going to see the actual transcript of the video, and it has the timestamps there. So just scroll there, and look for the 31-minute 19-second timestamp, and you can start from there.
Oh man, you stepping it up, BK. I mean, it's new to me. I didn't know you could do that, you know. But or at least sharing it. I've never tried this, so you know. Okay, BK is a professional out here. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right.
Concept of a minimalist Jesus, a Jesus that didn't do all the miracles, is one that you will ascribe to. Then I'm going to challenge you by putting on this cap, putting this pipe in my mouth, and putting this magnifying glass to my eye. And those of you probably heard me say that if you believe that the concept of a minimalist Jesus is one that makes good logical sense, then you have to say that you believe Sherlock Holmes is actually a historical character as well. I don't think there's anyone that would argue that. But the same logic has to apply because Sherlock Holmes was based on a living person, someone who existed. And so that is part of this challenge that some people have when they do the minimalist thing. They have to then say that Sherlock Holmes is a historical character, is a historical person. And so that was the intellectual exercise that I asked the audience to get involved in. And I think that it's just an interesting way to look at this argument. There are lots of stories that have historical elements in it. In fact, I dare say many fictional stories have historical elements in it. That's one of the reasons why people find them to be interesting. You know, you could even look at something like The Walking Dead. Clearly, we don't have zombies walking around in the manner that we see The Walking Dead, but it occurs in particular cities at a particular time. And in some ways, that's what makes the story interesting for people. And so I just think that that is not necessarily a strong argument. And I want to be able to discuss that to some degree as well.
You can stop that.
And then, so let's tap into.
So he is saying that if you take the biblical minimalist position, that equates to also agreeing that Sherlock Holmes also existed. Now, I'm going to let you rock in a minute, Adam. Just right off the bat, I don't know why he brings up the minimalist argument to begin with believers. Because most believers are biblical maximalists, not minimalists. So him bringing that up, I find it kind of odd because of the audience that he's talking to pastors, right? So it's like, I don't think most pastors would use a biblical minimalist approach to the historicity of Jesus. But then he goes into his analog connection with Sherlock Holmes. So what's your thoughts on that, sir?
Yeah, so I think he's trying to be like, maybe he's trying to cover all his bases. Like, you know, I guess if he's trying to say that, because let me backtrack. So this conversation is supposed to be in preparation for a possible debate between himself and I think like 3 or so other apologist pastors. I think he was trying to include Hebrews in there or whatever. So I guess if I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, like maybe he's trying to be like, well, if you don't affirm or argue for what he might call like or what might be called a maximalist Jesus, and you want to go with a minimalist Jesus, then I still got you. You know what I'm saying? But I can't imagine, given his crowd, I imagine, like you said, I would imagine folks probably would be arguing for a maximalist Jesus. But I think he's trying to cover all his bases. And for anybody who doesn't, and actually, I guess he kind of alluded to it in the video, but by minimalist Jesus, he means somebody arguing for there being an historical Jesus who didn't necessarily do all the miraculous things and things that would like the resurrection on down that would be recorded in the Gospels, for example, versus what we could classify or categorize as a maximalist Jesus, who is the Jesus that we would all affirm as Christians, like the Jesus who did and said what the Bible says he did and said, so that would be a maximalist Jesus. So I think he's just trying to be slick and cover all his bases, just in case maybe one of his interlocutors wants to argue for a minimalist Jesus. I got a couple arguments real quick that I think shuts this down. Do you have slides you want to get to first, or should I go with it?
I'm sorry. Yeah, you go first, bro.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. All right. Yeah. Let me bring up this PowerPoint. I'm gonna pull Alfredo right quick. Share my screen. You know what I mean? Give me 1 second.
Yes, sir.
So what he's trying to say is that before I bring this up, what he's trying to say is that in so much as Sherlock Holmes, the character in the fictional story Sherlock Holmes is based on a real person, right? Who obviously didn't do all the things that Sherlock Holmes did. He believes that that's analogous to what he refers to as a minimalist Jesus, who perhaps is a historical figure, but nevertheless didn't do all the things that the gospel says. And so what he's saying is if you're arguing for a minimalist Jesus, then you have to use the same logic and affirm the historical existence of Sherlock Holmes. So he's making an analogy there. So what I'm going to show is where the analogy fails. Like he seems to be really proud of this argument, by the way. Like I feel like this clip didn't really do it. He seemed to be straining himself.
I mean, he got props. He got the hat. He got the pipe. He went all in. He went all in.
Right, for sure. So he went all in on a fallacious argument, which we're about to see right now. So give me 1 second here. Let me go to my. Okay, so can y'all see that?
Yep.
All right. Let me make sure that's clear. I would just put in the presenter view so it's like super clear. Give me 1 second. All right. Play from. Okay, cool. How's that? Is that better?
Oh yeah, that's good.
All right, cool. So again, he's trying to make this analogy between Jesus and Sherlock Holmes, right? As I just explained. Now the problem is it's a disanalogy, right? And we can see that I probably could have gone further, but I was, working on this today, and these are things that I figure would be just easy to explain relatively quickly. First of all we have to do to defeat his argument is show that there are relevant differences between Jesus and Sherlock Holmes with respect to history. Okay, because he's making an analogy. He's making a historical analogy. He's saying, okay, if you accept Sherlock Holmes as a historical figure, you have to, if you accept Jesus, a minimalist Jesus as a historical figure, then you have to accept Sherlock Holmes. So again, all we have to do is show some basic differences, some relevant differences rather, to defeat this argument and show that it's disanalogous. So number one, genre. Okay. Now you might, somebody like a Michael Conan might say that the Gospels are Greco-Roman biography. Others might just say that it's historical narrative. Nevertheless, when you look at the authors of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they clearly intend for the audience to take Jesus as being an actual dude, like an actual historical person, right? I mean, you have passages like in John where it said these things are written that you might believe, and you have Luke, for example. That might be even a better example where he's presenting his case to Theophilus, and he's giving an orderly account of the life and teachings and ministry of Jesus, and then going into the Acts of the Apostles. He's clearly trying to present to Theophilus an account of a real Jesus who explains this Christian movement that Theophilus is trying to make sense of, right? So clearly the authors of the Gospels, and by extension also we can say the other books in the New Testament. Well, I'll just stick with the Gospels. The Gospels are written as historical narrative. They're trying to report to the reader things that actually happen. Now, even if you don't believe that the things recorded in the Gospel actually happen, it's clear from the writings that the intent of the authors is that they're trying to convey what they believe to be historical events. Now, obviously, that's different from Sherlock Holmes, because it's never been the case that Sherlock Holmes it was meant to represent anything historical. It's clearly, the genre is clearly fiction, right? The author of Sherlock Holmes, whose name escapes me right now, is Arthur Doyle or something like that. The author of Sherlock Holmes clearly intends for the audience to understand his work as being fiction. These are stories. So beginning with the intent of the authors, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, versus Sir Arthur Doyle, their intents for those narratives are obviously different. The Gospels are intended to convey history. The intent of Sherlock Holmes is to convey fiction, right? So already we have a disanalogy. Number two, when you think about the main figures in each case, obviously with the Gospels, we're talking about Jesus of Nazareth, right? Now in the Gospels, you have an actual person represented in the narrative, right? So it's not that, actually, maybe it might be easier to start with Sherlock Holmes. With Sherlock Holmes, the claim is that Sherlock Holmes didn't actually exist. There's never been a person named Sherlock Holmes. Nevertheless, there was another guy with another name upon whom this character Sherlock Holmes was based, right? So Sherlock Holmes was based on an actual person, versus the Gospel is about an actual person, right? The Gospels is not about a Jesus who's basically there's some other dude, right? The authors are not intending for you to believe that there's some other guy who they're going to switch the name and call him Jesus for the sake of the writings. No, Jesus himself is represented in the text, right? Whoever, and I can't remember the guy's name, he mentioned him in that interview we're just looking at. Whoever the guy that Sherlock Holmes is based on, he himself was not represented in the story, right? Sherlock Holmes is based on that guy. The same cannot be said about Jesus of Nazareth as the main figure of the gospel. So again, that's two. Those are two relevant differences that point to a disanalogy here. Number three, when you get into the historical record itself, okay, even if you take the gospels off the table, right, you can still look at other extra biblical sources by which you can affirm that Jesus was indeed a historical person, right? Whether it be Tacitus, we can talk about Josephus, both passages. We can talk about Baramar Serapion. We can talk about Suetonius. There are a number of different ancient writers. We're looking at like the second and third century and so forth, who attest to Jesus being an actual historical person, right? Now, this is another piece, just as a little side note, because for whatever reason, I don't know why, JABARI, he claims he's a historian, and so I don't know why he keeps making this claim. He often makes a point out of the fact that somebody like a Josephus or Tacitus wasn't writing in the time that Jesus lived. That's an approach to historical sources that no credible historian would hang his hat on, right? Credible historians don't depend upon only sources that are concurrent with somebody's life. If that was the case, then like 99% of the people that we believe that lived in the ancient world, we couldn't really affirm lived. So you'd have to apply that to everybody, and then ancient historiography would become essentially meaningless. So that's why that criterion of concurrent sources that JABARI applies is a useless criterion, because it would eliminate just swaths of reliable history, which is why a real historian would never hang his hat on that claim. So anyway, that being said, you have multiple attestation. There are multiple sources outside what we refer to as the New Testament that affirm that Jesus was indeed a real person. You know, that regular historians, credentialed historians all across the globe take very seriously, whether Jabari does or not, you know, so he can take that up with them. The same cannot be said for Sherlock Holmes, right? Like nobody's walking around. There's nobody, whether it be during Sherlock Holmes' time, you know, in terms of the narrative, in terms of when he supposedly lived, or afterwards, nobody's attesting to the real Sherlock Holmes ever having lived, right? And so even if you take the Gospels out of the picture, just the nature of where these two figures sit in relation to history is entirely different. You have one on the one hand, Jesus Christ, who is attested to have existed by multiple sources independent of the New Testament, and there's no historical attestation for Sherlock Holmes, right? Lastly, when it comes to historical explanations, and that's just kind of a clunky way of, I guess, maybe kind of expressing this idea, right? I actually am a Sherlock Holmes fan. I haven't read all the stories, but particularly in some of the movies, you know, with Basil Rathbone, which is depicted here on the right, sometimes Sherlock Holmes is dealing with like the Nazis, for example, you know, so you're kind of in that World War II era, and it's, you know, Sherlock Holmes against the Nazis. Here's the thing. You can look at the entire historical record during World War II and before and after that time and get a full picture of what was going on without ever thinking that the existence of Sherlock Holmes makes one shred of difference with the total story of what's going on during that time, right? In other words, the existence of Sherlock Holmes, there's no relation to him and the events that we know actually occurred in real history. And so there's, from an explanation standpoint, if I'm an historian and I'm trying to get an understanding of the 1940s, up to 1945 World War II, I'm not going to be consulting anything about Sherlock Holmes in terms of him as an actual historical figure. Contrary to that, if you look at Jesus, if you're an historian, particularly if you're looking at the first century, right, and you're trying to understand just kind of the big picture of how this Christian movement came about and what was going on at the time, you've got to wrestle with the historicity of Jesus, right? What historians do is, and this is another piece here, and I'll be quick with it, historians don't only look at evidence that counts in favor of somebody's existence, like, you know, maybe you can call it positive evidence. They also look at what would be the likelihood that what we see in the historical record would be there if this person did not exist, or if this or that event did not happen, right? And so, in other words, if you take Jesus out of the picture as an actual historical figure, you know, how do we account for things like the emergence of the Christian movement and a number of other different things that were going on during the first century and after, right? If we're trying to make sense of the first century and we want to have an explanation as to why things were the way that they were, the existence of Jesus as a historical figure makes much more sense of all the other things that we see in the historical record revolving around him, as opposed than to try to explain why those things were going on and he didn't actually exist. And so when it comes to, again, historians trying to make sense of what's going on back in the day, you've got an issue of explanations where Jesus serves as a valuable explanation as to why things were going on the way they were going on in the first century, particularly in regards to the emergence of the Christian movement. And then again, contrary to that, Sherlock Holmes doesn't benefit as not one iota in terms of understanding what was or wasn't going on with the Nazis, for example, from a historical standpoint. So when you take these four different points of difference, then what you see is that contrary to what your boy Jabari would have us to believe, they're not like us, bro. You know, Sherlock Holmes is nothing like Jesus of Nazareth, like by way of comparison. It's a terrible analogy. As a matter of fact, it's a disanalogy, which thereby makes his argument a fallacious argument. It's a disanalogy fallacy, if you will. You know, you like I threw the Kendrick Lamar in there?
That was hilarious, bro. That was hilarious. This guy, man.
I wish I had the music playing behind it. You know what I mean? But
Bennett, yeah, right. Mustard on the beat. So I guess Jabari's a free throw, right? That's what you say. His analogy is a free throw.
I mean, true.
Man, that's dope. That's dope. So yeah, I mean, to your point, you know, it's hard to make this connection when Sherlock Holmes has never been considered an actual person, right? And the reason why I say that, let me share my screen. Let's see here. Okay. Alrighty. Wait, what's going on here? Oh. Okay, I'm having some difficulties here. That's not good. Hold on. All right. All right. Keep talking to the people. Let me fix something for a minute. Adam.
All right, cool. That actually gave me a second to address this comment right here, and I probably want to address all of them. I don't have control, so I can't put it on the screen. But I think Jesus Tales says that 90% of Mark's Jesus of Nazareth is based on prior Jesuses. Let me just say this real quick. One of the problems that people run into when they make claims like that is that they end up making either ad hoc claims where you just have to kind of make it up whole cloth and it doesn't really account for the data, or maybe to put it differently, the explanations become more complicated, and the more complicated an explanation you have, the less likely it is to be a good one. I think the most sleek explanation as to why Mark says what he says about Jesus, from a historical standpoint, is that he actually believed that what occurred. He's actually reporting to us what happened. There's a historical and cultural milieu that gives rise to his whole narrative, as opposed to looking here, there, and everywhere, trying to cobble together, Jesus is from other cultures to make sense of what's going on. It's actually a more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of like the notion of Occam's razor. It's a simpler explanation. And I think in a preferable explanation, given the data, that Mark just simply reported what he thought to have been the case. Anyway, you good, bro?
Yes, we're good. All right. So we'll be looking at Arthur and Sherlock, Conan Doyle, and the Creation of Holmes by Michael Sims. All right. It says here, he was drawn to detective stories out of his own interest. He had long admired the logical mind of Edgar Allan Poe's unofficial detective, C. Auguste Dupin. He enjoyed the adventures of Emile Gaboriau's eagle-eyed police detective, Monsieur Lecoy, the bold manhunters of Penny Dreadfuls, Charles Dickens' Inspector Bucket from Bleak House, Wilkie Collins' Sergeant Cuff from Moonstone, Anna Catherine Green's more recent New York policeman, Ebenezer Christ from the Leavenworth case. Many such detectives already cavorted in Arthur's imagination when he decided to create his own. So he has other fictional characters in mind who were also known for their police work, detective work, when he decided to create his own detective. So,
wow, I didn't know that.
So did he use other people as inspiration? Yeah, but he also used other fictional characters when he was thinking about creating Sherlock Holmes. In identifying his detective, Arthur did not want to use the Dickensian kind of moniker that implied character, not Mr. Sharps or Mr. Ferrets, he said later. Yet he yearned for something unusual. He scrawled lists considering various combinations of given names and surnames, including Sherrington Hope. Finally, he settled upon Holmes as his detective surname, likely because of his and his family's fondness for the writings of Oliver Wendell Holmes. But Holmes was also a name one often saw around England. It was particularly associated with London in the minds of many because of the popular volume Holmes' Great Metropolis, or Views and History of London in the 19th Century, published in 1851, the year of the Crystal Palace exhibition. Sherrington evolved into Sherrinford, and Arthur's new hero was to be Sherrinford Holmes. So here we see the creative process of getting the name. So he got the surname because, well, what the author is saying is either from their fondness for Oliver Wendell Holmes or other famous Holmes of that period. So before he was Sherlock, he was Sherrinford. Okay.
Interesting.
But the given name Sherrinford did not satisfy Arthur. he considered others besides his Stonyhurst classmate Patrick Sherlock and the William Sherlock who cavorted through Macaulay's History of England and fictional characters such as Carmel Sherlock in Sheridan Le Fanu's novel A Lost Name. Author must have also encountered the name Sherlock in the context of crime solving during his time in medical school in Edinburgh. London's Metropolitan Police Force already included one Chief Inspector William Sherlock of Division L in Lambeth, who was often mentioned in British newspapers amid their extensive report of crime and investigations. The adventures of Sherlock were reported in the Times and the Home Chronicler, as well as other periodicals. The 1881 census listed Inspector Sherlock as stationed at Kennington Road in Lambeth. In February 1881, the Portsmouth Evening News reported a rowdy inquest into a murder that occurred in Catham in northern Kent. Chief Inspector Sherlock has been sent from London to assist the Catman authorities in their investigation. So this name Sherlock was around Mr. Doyle's life via fictional characters and actual policemen. Okay. For reasons that neither can be known for certain, the name Sherlock occurred to Arthur as a replacement for Sherrinford. He kept the beloved surname and named his detective Sherlock Holmes.
Hey, Sherlock is a way better name than Sherrinford.
Right, right. But we know the creative process of how he got the name of this fictional character.
Right.
Right? And it's not based on just one person. It's based on various persons that he came across in life, fictional characters or otherwise. Now, he could say, well, just like Jesus, he's a composite sketch. But Jesus was never considered a fictional person until, well, let's see when was he considered a fictional person. This is from Jesus Outside the New Testament, Introduction to the Ancient Evidence by Robert E. Van Verse. He says, at the end of the 18th century, some disciples of the radical English deist Lord Bolingbroke began to spread the idea that Jesus had never existed. Voltaire, no friend of traditional Christianity, sharply rejected such conclusions, commenting that those who deny the existence of Jesus showed themselves, quote, more ingenious than learned. Nevertheless, in the 1790s, a few of the more radical French Enlightenment thinkers, the Talmuds, JABARI will call them, wrote that Christianity and its Christ were myths. Christian Francois Volney and Charles Francois Dupuy published books promoting these arguments, saying that Christianity was an updated amalgamation of ancient Persian and Babylonian mythology, with Jesus a completely mythological figure. We don't have written statements and books about Jesus not existing until the end of the 18th century.
Wow.
From French Enlightenment, radical French Enlightenment thinkers. So prior to that wasn't the case. But with Sherlock, from day one, we knew this dude was a fictional character. That's why this makes for a horrible connection.
The slide game is strong today, BK. The force is with you today.
So with that, man, let's go back to the video. Unless you want to say something real quick before we.
I mean, that point is dead. I mean, like, you know, there's a fundamental difference between Sherlock Holmes and Jesus. Like, they're entirely different, and so his whole argument falls apart. It's a terrible argument. And I hope he didn't go out and actually just go purchase that hat and the pipe and the monocle or whatever you call that thing just for that purpose. He just wasted some money. But anyway.
Well, I mean, he's good for his next, you know, if he wants to, you know, Halloween's coming up pretty soon. I guess he'll be, you know, he's straight now. So, yeah. Right. But yeah, let's get back to the video. And Adam, if you can go to the 50-minute mark.
He's at 50-50?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let me do that. Oh, this thing's being slow. Here we go. All right. Boom. All right. Here we go.
surprised that I've actually read some of those scholars.
Okay.
So let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming since you claim you read their names that you've read their work. Who wrote Jesus and the Victory of God?
I'm going to say I think that was N.T. Wright.
Yeah. Sonetta, can you put this up, please?
But Jabari, wait before you do. Jabari, wait before you do. I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to ask you. I think you put this up before.
Yep.
And what I'm going to ask you to do is be careful about using this quote out of context, because Adam Coleman saw, and I'm saying Adam Coleman went back and saw the whole quote. I'm going
to say to you, Adam Coleman is not someone you want to cite, because Adam Coleman says a lot of stuff.
He showed the whole quote.
Adam Coleman says a lot of stuff about me, but never to me. So when that brother, wait a minute, when that brother shows me the bag of rocks that his hand is in, then I'll justify and respect anything that he's saying. Adam Coleman says that he's defeated me many times on videos, particularly with BK apologists. We've already vetted these comments that Jabari has made. He has not. He makes the worst arguments, and I would love for Adam Coleman to step forward and be vetted in front of me. But let's
stop it there.
About N.T. Wright, Nicholas Thomas.
So Adam, your thoughts on that, sir? It's coming for you. He was kind of chippy. He was kind of chippy with you.
He's a little chippy, bro. And it was funny. It's funny to me because I didn't even know about it until you told me. You told me that he had said something of that, and then you sent me a link. I went back and watched it, and I think it's hilarious because first of all, and we'll get to the NT right here part in a second. But just off top, like what he said, like I said, I always say things about him, but never to him. Bro, we had like a 2-hour conversation on side of the TV. How could it be true that I never say anything to you when we had a 2-hour conversation on side of the TV? That's number one. Matter of fact, even before that, and BKU was there. Like when there was the debate between
the Bantu debate.
Yeah, between Bantu and Jabari, we were both there.
Yes,
and
sir.
Anybody can go watch the video. When you got to the Q&A, who was one of the people that asked Jabari a question? It was me. I asked him a kind of spicy, challenging question, right?
Straight dagger, bro.
Dagger, right? So I'm talking to him in person, and then not only that, after I asked that question, after the debate, I went up to him afterward and it was just like, hey man, appreciate you answering my question. I would love to dialogue with you further. Blah blah blah. We took a picture together and I put it on my Instagram, right? So I've literally spoken to this man face to face, individually, directly, publicly. We've spoken on Saturday. So this idea that Adam Coleman always says things about me but never to me, I don't like. That's delusional to me. Where is he getting that? That's crazy to me, right? And then I'm gonna just be clear, and this is not a shot at anybody. It's definitely not a shot at Sonetta's platform because he wasn't the one that made this comment. But the fact of the matter is, Adam Cole, going on Sonetta is not validation for me, or anybody in the urban apologetics community. Like we don't have to go on the Sonetta to be valid.
Yep.
I have my own platform. And I go on various different platforms, when I feel like I'm led to do so. That's what I do. So this notion of I would like to have Adam Coleman vetted here before me, bro. What are you talking about? You talking crazy? And I'm sorry. This is where I have to get a little spicy. Listen, you can't be that pseudo from day in day out, and then be coming to me, be talking about, oh, you need me to be vetted. Bro, you should be vetted because you've been lying to the community for years. I won't say lying. I take that back. I won't say lying. But you've been passing along fraudulent information. Let me tell you. Let me be careful. I don't believe that Jabari is a liar. I believe that he believes what he's saying. I think that. Nevertheless, his information is exceedingly pseudo, and he's been passing bad information to the community for years. As a matter of fact, in this debate right here, this cat was co-signing Kersey Graves. What's some of the other dudes from the 1800s? What's my man? Alfred Boyd Kuhn. Cats who are known pseudos, and he's in them in the league of people that should be considered as reputable sources. It was a gentleman called in and asked him about some of those sources, and they were like vibing on it. Bro, we know that you eat like morning, noon, and night. You eat, sleep, and breathe pseudo information. What are you talking about? Somebody has to be vetted before you. That's crazy. That's crazy. So anyway, one of the things I've said, and I'll say it on camera. One of the things I've said about Jabari off camera, and I'll say it on camera. I believe, like, he's like, when it comes to comedicism, he really believes it. Like he's not pretending. It's not for the money or anything like that. And actually, that's one of the things that I respect about him. But I think that he really has delusions of grandeur when it comes to where he really stands in relation to scholarly information. I think he's got to be careful about that. I would never say, oh, he's got to come on my channel and be vetted before me. Nah, that's crazy talk. So anyway, that's on one level, that's what I had to say. But I do have some slides about his actual claims I want to get into. But I don't know if there's something you want to say.
Yeah, I definitely want to say something. So it's weird that he puts us on a different tier when it comes to this, because when Chief X critiques him, he has no problem vetting him without Chief X present. Same thing with Garfield or Tazariot. No problem with them. They don't need to be present for him to critique their work. But for some reason, me and you, Adam, we have to be front to Ansan Netta before he vets whatever claims we're making. I find that odd. Why we get the special treatment? I don't understand. Like, is that a backhanded compliment, maybe? I mean, I don't know. I'm confused.
I don't know. And I guess I take exception to this idea that somehow I'm being sneaky or something. Like you said, like when Adam takes his hand out of his bag of rocks.
Right.
I'm saying everything in public, recorded on video.
Right.
I've had multiple conversations with you directly, right? Like I said, we was on Side Netter, we at the Vince Bantu debate when he was on stage, and then again off stage. Matter of fact, I don't even know what to say, bro. This man, because we exchanged information. I got his phone number in my phone right now. We exchanged information when we was at the debate, and when he got COVID, like I guess maybe 2 or so years ago, I texted him, man. I said, "Hey, man, I hope you're doing all right. Praying for you." You know what I'm saying? Right. Where's all this coming from? That's crazy to me. That's crazy to me. Anyway, man, so I think that Jabari is, again, I don't think he's being deceptive in the sense that I believe that he believes what he's saying. I don't think that there are a lot of people out here who are making claims against Christianity where I don't even think they believe what they're saying. I wouldn't put Jabari in that category. He believes what he's saying. He's just wrong a lot, which is why we have to spend time up here refuting it.
A lot,
bro. A lot. So it's funny, man. But it's cool. I'm genuinely not hilarious. It's hilarious.
Once again, Adam, if you could walk us through the issues with him using anti-right in this manner, if you could just walk us through that.
Right. Yes. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna show my screen. So it's a. Let me just say this. One thing. All right, I gotta say this one more thing.
Oh man, yeah.
He said that I made claims that I've defeated him several times. I don't even talk like that. What is he talking about? Like, I've never said like I've defeated Jabari several times. Like that's not even. Like I don't know where he got that from. But again,
he's projecting his own feelings. He knows that you've defeated.
I guess so. I'm catching strays for no reason. I'm like, I'm minding my business. I can't say something about it. But anyway, man,
bro, it's funny. It's funny, man. He's real chippy now. I'm like, okay, Jabari, easy.
So if he can be chippy, then so can we, right? So so y'all see this?
Yeah, what's going on, man? What you doing?
So I think
what up the turntable? You gonna rap now? You gonna verse? What's going on?
I'm not gonna rap. It's a rap for him. I'm not gonna rap. But, we're taking a long time right here, but I believe I coined this phrase. I'm not even 100% sure. I was being funny, so I didn't even look it up. But here we have obviously a record player. It looks like it's a little dusty, a little scratched up. And so when it comes to this NT Wright argument, right, I'm going to say that Jabari is the king of the broken record fallacy.
Wow.
You heard it here first.
Break it
the
down,
broken
brother.
record, right? Just because you repeat the same fallacious information over and over again doesn't make it true. You know what I'm saying? By Jabari's own admission, when he was about to go into the quotation with N.T. Wright, what's his name? Pastor Bennett asked him, like, yo, this before you go there, is this the same quote that you had before? And Jabari said yes. As a matter of fact, if you watch the whole video, say he's used it several times since the first time that he brought it up. So again, just because, in other words, something false doesn't become true just because it's repeated over and over again. It's the broken record fallacy. I don't know if he feels like if he keeps repeating it, then people are just going to believe it all of a sudden. But I think that's what we're dealing with here. So here's the quote again. Now, it was interesting is this is actually the original slide that we used. I guess it was like 2 or so years ago when we first addressed it. For some reason, it's a little bit funny because I had to download it. I don't even use the slide format anymore, but I downloaded it to PowerPoint. So some of the words came out a little weird, but I'm gonna go ahead and read it anyway. So take note of what it says here. It says, second, I have taken it for granted that Jesus of Nazareth existed. Now, I'm gonna stop at the outset. This is the line that Jabari gets all worked up about, right? Because he's trying to make the claim that Christian historians and perhaps other historians as well don't really have well-founded reasons for affirming that Jesus actually existed, but rather it's something that's kind of taken for granted. And so he believes that this quote from N.T. Wright is exemplary of that this is an example of a credentialed historian who actually hasn't done his homework on the existence of Jesus and simply takes it for granted. And that it's not like an intellectually held position. It's just something that he's flippant about. That's what he's really worked up is about this first line. But we're going to make a couple points, but I just want you to listen to the whole quote and then we'll dig further. So he says, second, I have taken it for granted that Jesus of Nazareth existed. Some writers feel the need to justify this assumption at length against people who try from time to time to deny it. It would be easier, frankly, to believe that Tiberius Caesar, Jesus' contemporary, was a figment of the imagination than to believe that there was never such a person as Jesus. Those who persist in denying this obvious point will probably not want to read a book like this anyway. Okay, now I'm going to go a couple of different directions here, but first of all, just at the outset, all you have to do to see that Jabari is mistaken about how he's taking that first line is just read the rest of the paragraph. That's all you have to
context. Do. It's called context.
Just read context, right? Because N.T. Wright in his paragraph, he's saying that he's not taking time in this particular work to go into the evidence as to whether or not Jesus existed or that Jesus existed. And he's treating it as it's silly to think that Jesus existed. He said it's so silly that it's easier to believe that Tiberius Caesar. Now he cites Tiberius Caesar because that's somebody that nobody would argue actually existed, right? Tiberius Caesar obviously existed. It's not controversial. And so that's why N.T. Wright is using Tiberius as an example. He said it would be easier, frankly, to believe that Tiberius Caesar, somebody that everybody agrees existed, Jesus' contemporary, was a figment of the imagination, than to believe that there never was such a person as Jesus, right? And then I think it's actually kind of tongue-in-cheek, the next line, those who persist in denying this obvious point will probably not want to read a book like this anyway, because what he's saying is, N.T. Wright is saying, I write scholarly stuff that's based on real history. So if you're running around as a Jesus mythicist, you're not serious. You're an unserious reader, and you probably won't like my serious work. That's what N.T. Wright is saying, right? But nevertheless, the point is, Tiberius Caesar obviously existed, and he's saying it would be easier to say that Tiberius Caesar didn't than to deny that Jesus existed. Obviously, N.T. Wright believes it to be a historical fact that Jesus existed. That's point number one. All you got to do is read the context. Point number two, just look at the first word in the paragraph. It says second, right? Well, if you see the word second, then you can infer that there probably was a first. And you would be right, because actually what's going on here, N.T. Wright is making a list of points all in succession with one another. And the one that Jabari has gotten hung up on is the second of actually 8 different points that he's making. Now, what's going on here? N.T. Wright is in the introduction of his book, Jesus and the Victory of God and so forth. in the introduction, what you see in scholarly works, or really any legitimate nonfiction, authors will often take time to set the parameters for the book, right? So they're basically setting up for the reader what you can expect as you get into the book. That's what they're doing in the introduction. And so they're setting parameters, saying, hey, I'm not going to get into this, or I am going to get into that. They're letting the reader know kind of what's the framework that they're working in. So as you're reading the book, it makes more sense to you. So for example, again, if you see second, there must have been a first. And in this list, he's saying first, he's going to use lowercase g in God and Jesus rather than Christ, right? He's letting the reader know. The second point, he's taking it for granted that Jesus exists. In other words, given the content that he's dealing with in this book, the argument as to whether or not Jesus existed doesn't fit within the parameters of what he's dealing with in this particular book. He's not speaking to his own disposition as to whether or not Jesus existed, right? He's not saying that I take it for granted that Jesus existed. He's not saying that's his belief. He's saying that for this particular book, we're not going to get into the history as to whether or not Jesus existed. We're writing with the presumption that he did indeed exist, and we're covering other areas pertaining to Christ. That's what he's talking about. And then he goes on, in Jesus Victory of God, Volume 2, he talks about how it revolves around the synoptic gospels, not John. He lays that out. So he's telling the reader that we're not going to get into John a whole lot. He says he's not going to interact with everybody and everything, basically. So in terms of, so there will be statements made in the book that he recognizes some people disagree with, and he's not really getting into the weeds for all of that. He's listing all these different parameters. Not all portions of the Jesus narrative receive the same degree of attention in Jesus, the Victory of God. That's his fifth point. The sixth point, he works to avoid over exegesis and under exegesis, and he explains what he means by that. His seventh point is that the book does not attempt to follow the synoptic accounts of Jesus' life straight through, like in chronological order, but he's dealing with the different passages and according to different themes. And then his eighth point, he says first century Jews consider themselves to still be in exile. And some of N.T. Wright's detractors don't believe that. And he notes that I know that everybody's not going to agree with me on that, but for the sake of this book, that's the position that I'm coming from. So with these 8 points, all he's doing is laying out a framework as to how to understand what he's doing in this particular book. He's not speaking to his overall perspective as to whether or not Jesus existed. So again, if you start with the context, right, just in that paragraph, you can tell that N.T. Wright obviously believes that Jesus is a historical figure. And if you take into account that this second point is being made in the context of 8 others, where he's setting parameters of the book itself, not of his own broader perspective, then you realize that, again, just as Pastor Bennett warned JABARI not to do, JABARI has indeed taken N.T. Wright out of context and made the claim that this is an example of an historian who indeed doesn't have good grounds to affirm that Jesus exists and nevertheless takes it for granted that that's the case. So this is just bad. Again, I'm not trying to be but so spicy here, but JABARI has claimed time and time again that he's an historian. And what I'm saying is, just as a source of information, if you have an individual like a JABARI who has difficulty with reading things in context, then that person is not a reliable source of information. It's that simple, right? Anybody can make a mistake, right? So maybe when we first made this critique, perhaps he could have seen it and then corrected, but by his own admission, he's continued to make this claim and this argument. And that's been at least like 1 or 2 years ago that he first started making. So he's done this multiple times. So even in the face of obvious counter evidence to how he's using this passage, he's still using it in an erroneous way. So that says to me that we're dealing with somebody who's not interested in truth when it comes to cutting against his arguments. So he wants to vet me and vet all these other people. But nevertheless, I think JABARI should be the one that needs to be vetted. Like we need to act, maybe we need to comb through some of his previous presentations and things of that nature to see where these other obvious mistakes have been made. Because if you can't, get something like this right, then I have zero confidence that you're delivering reliable information on a consistent basis. Why should we believe that when you can't read, things in context like this right here? So that's what I got to say on that, bro.
No, I mean, once again, and the thing is, I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would bet that he saw the first time you've corrected him on the usage of that quote, because he says now he openly says that he watches our videos, right?
Right.
That he says that you personally have said multiple times that you've defeated him. So there's a good chance he's already seen the first time you've corrected him on this. Hopefully, maybe this one resonates a little bit more, perhaps. Right? Perhaps. So with that, sir, if you could put back the video, and if you can fast forward to the 1 hour, 22 minutes mark.
All right, 122.
What up, Bill for Speed? It's good to see you, bro.
And I want to be like clear. Like I've been pretty careful not to call the man dishonest. You know what I'm saying? I try not to do that. But if there's ever a time where I would, wonder if there's some dishonesty going on, it would be this right here. Like, how do you continue? Like, how do you continue to use the same bad information, years on end, even being confronted with clear counter evidence? You said it was 122. Was that what you said?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please share the link, guys. Please share the link. Oh, wait.
Theological
I get
looking at antiquity. So let's clarify that first. The second thing is the Talmud makes references to Jesus of Nazareth that's referenced in the scripture because they're making arguments against Christianity. They say things like he deceived the people through witchcraft or trickery. They say things like he was conceived by a fornication with a Roman soldier. And I can provide all these quotations from the Babylonian Talmud, a lot of which I don't even want to repeat, but they make theological arguments against Jesus when if he didn't exist, well, that should have been the first full stop argument, is to say that these Christians believe in somebody that never existed. They did not even make the claim. And we're talking about a source of antiquity, in antiquity. They didn't make the claim that Jesus never existed. Even when you look at Islam, which comes on the scene in the 600s AD, in the 7th century, Muhammad does not even make the argument that Jesus didn't exist, which is something that he could have easily done, but he doesn't. So you have a lot of non-Christians that it would seem like if they could make the argument that Jesus didn't exist as you are, they would have. And since they existed centuries before us,
all right, stop that for a minute.
Closer to the source material.
Go, because it's a little long. Go to now go to the 1 hour, 25 minute mark.
Got him in another city already. What are you doing? The question was, I said, Brother Charles, have you read the Talmud? And if you have, how many Jesuses are there in the Talmud? You did not answer that question at all. And I want to be clear that I did not say that you were trying to convert me in a faith argument. And maybe that's how you thought I meant it. I didn't mean it that way. What I'm saying is, you said that you could not convince me of a historical Jesus because I don't want to believe that. But you're not really trying to convince me. You're talking to an audience. That's why we're doing this live. We're not sitting at the bar having a drink. This is a group. But I want you to answer the question. 1, have you read the Talmud? And 2, how many Jesuses are there? Because you are using the Talmud as a source which will give us proof of a historical Jesus. And I'm going to throw another question in there because I think you haven't read it, and I'm going to make it hot on you. What period is the Talmud? When was it written?
Okay.
Answer those 3 questions, please.
Well, first of all, the debate is not about the particulars of the Talmud. I will tell you, I've not read the entire Talmud, man. Don't you know, man, that thing is about 10,000 pages or 20,000 pages long. I haven't read the entire Talmud. I have read the Talmud. I haven't read the entire Talmud. Since I haven't read the entire Talmud, I can't begin to tell you how many Jesuses or Yehoshuas are mentioned in the Talmud. I think it's an asinine question that's not even related to what we're talking about. I can tell you that the Talmud does make reference to Christians and does make reference to Jesus of Nazareth, whom we read about in the New Testament, and they do right against him, and they do right against that movement. They do make theological arguments against it. That's true, is it not?
All right, stop there. Stop there.
Let me jump.
And then go to the 1 hour 28-minute mark.
The audience sees that you're interrupting. They see that. It don't look good, Brother Charles. It don't look good, Brother Charles. Now wait, let me say this to you. Let me say this to you. You didn't need to read the whole Talmud, even if you just read the passages that you were referring to. But you're now clear. Look at Pastor Bennett's face, by the way. He's gonna try to keep it real straight. Look at Pastor Bennett's face. Listen, what is clear now is that you didn't even read the passages that you're citing. You did not read because they don't cite one Jesus. They say, well,
I did read the passages that I'm citing.
So then you should be able to answer my question, and you were not able to answer it.
No, you asked me how many Jesuses,
and you said you could not answer the question. You said you couldn't answer the question. It would require
me to have read the whole Talmud.
No, it would not have meant. No, it would not.
Or your host was a Joshua.
It would not.
Name is synonymous. So you're trying to be slick. You're trying to be slick.
Listen.
Name Jesus is synonymous with the name Joshua or Yehoshua.
Share the screen,
please. Slick, man.
Share the screen.
Get it past me.
Please share the screen.
You can't get it past me.
I heard you, Jabari. Hold on. Let me let him finish.
All right. I'm the one talking. He's interrupting me.
All right, hold on. Hold on, Charles. Hold on, Reverend Charles. Hold on.
You don't need to read the whole Talmud, brother. But if you're going to cite something, at least know the pieces that you're citing.
Cut in when you want to, Pastor Bennett. You know how to do this.
You could have easily read some scholarly articles that describe the Jesus of the Talmud. But you didn't even do that, brother, because then you say you don't know how many Jesuses there are in the Talmud. Are you referring to?
Hold on, Reverend Charles. Let him finish, Reverend.
Brother. Hold on. Yeah, hold on. Are you referring to? By the way, none of them say Jesus. I'm not trying to play semantic games and say that I'm not talking about Jesus. We're talking about Yeshua. None of them say Jesus. They say Yeshua. Okay. I wasn't doing that to you. That would be a childish argument, not an argument that scholars should be able to make, right? I know when you say Jesus, you're referring to Yeshua. I'm not doing that. The J didn't exist. All of that is true, but I'm not doing that to you. I'm having a higher level questioning here, and unfortunately, you failed at the higher level questioning. You didn't. I would have loved for you to say, well, there's Yeshua ben Stata. There's Yeshua Ben Pandera. I mean, you didn't. The reality is that you haven't read any of it, and you're citing it. You're saying there are all these sources for the historical Jesus, but you haven't read the source. How do you know it's a source if you haven't read it? Someone told you it was a source? Go back to the person that told you that. Wait a minute. Go back to the person that told you that. Ring their doorbell.
Hold on, Reverend.
Wait, open the door. Slap them.
Let me slap them
with a good
percentage. Reverend, you're next. I'm gonna let you share your screen. Hold on.
Right, you can stop there. You can stop it, Adam.
Because
man, that's a mess, bro.
So yeah, so the brother Charles, right? He's given reasons why we should believe in the historicity of Jesus, and he mentions the Talmud, right? And that the Talmud, basically slanders Jesus, right? And his point is because they're doing that, you're not going to slander an imaginary figure.
Right.
Why would you go through such great pains to drag somebody in the mud if they never existed? And then Jabari, typical Jabari faction, he wants to quibble. Right. That's one of his tactics when he talks to people. He tries to find these little things and make that the issue as opposed to the main topic of discussion. So he mentions what a knife.
Quick.
Yeah.
Just real because you pointed out something really important, and I was actually going to make mention. I just want to say this real quick, but just as a tip, for apologists, or really not even just apologists, as you're engaging with people for the gospel, like be careful of like the meaningless flex approach. You know what I'm saying? Like, I guess you can call it like the meaningless flex fallacy. Where like Jabari, I've seen Brother Polite do this as well. Well, they'll quibble on something minor, as like kind of a gamesmanship to kind of gain leverage in the conversation, to make themselves appear to be more knowledgeable. But it's really a super minor and irrelevant point. And the brother in the video called him out on it. It was like, man, this is an asinine question because it's not relevant to what he was saying. And I'll say more about it, but I just wanted to highlight that because you brought that out, and I think that's really important for people to be on the lookout for.
Right. So, and he's quoting from the Talmud. So at first he wants to make it seem as if because he hasn't read it in its entirety, that somehow he shouldn't be able to use it. But then he does backpedal. JABARI does backpedal a little bit about that. He's like, we don't have to read the whole thing. So while he's having this conversation, though, he puts up this paper and he scrolls through it, but he never really reads it, right? And you know how I get down. So, I have the paper, right? This is the paper that he scrolls through. So we're going to look at this, right? And it's called, it's from Oxford Journal, The Personality of Jesus in the Talmud by Bernard Pick. Now, this actually comes from a book from Mr. Bernard Pick called Jesus in the Talmud. And you see here, part 1 is the paper that JABARI shows but doesn't read, right? So we're going to read some portions of it and let's see what it says, right? The anti-Christian character of Jewish writings early attracted the attention of Christians. And Agobard, Bishop of Lyon, and his De Judaeis Superstitio Nubis and Hibernius Maris, Archbishop of Manis, and his Contra Judeos. Man, I'm trying, man. Read about 847 AD, betray acquaintance with Jewish literature. The first attack upon the Talmud was made in the 13th century when, in the 1240 AD, a conference was held at Paris between Nicholas Donin and some Jewish rabbis. When the question came up as to Jesus in the Talmud, Rabbi Jesiel, the most prominent of the Jewish rabbis at that conference, would not admit that Jesus spoken of in the Talmud was the Jesus of Nazareth, but another Jesus, a discovery which was copied by some later writers. But modern Jews acknowledge the failure of this argument. For, says Dr. Levin in his prize essay, quote, we must regard the attempt of Rabbi Jehel to ascertain that there were two by the name of Jesus as unfortunate, original as the idea may be. A very nice way of saying dude was capping.
Right.
His own Jewish brethren was like, that dude was capping.
Bro. Yeah, right.
Right? That there were two by the name of Jesus. Like, no, there wasn't. And remember what JABARI asked this guy? How many Jesuses were there in the Talmud? Remember that, right? Let's continue. Mm-hmm. In our days, such accusations against the Talmud were impossible because all these offensive passages have been removed, not so much by the hands of the Christian censor as by the Jews themselves. A fact only very often overlooked by controversialists. In the Jewish year, 1631, a Jewish synod held at Piotrkow in Poland issued a circular letter to the effect that all such passages in the Talmud which refer to Jesus, etc., should be omitted in the future. Now, they wouldn't do that unless they knew which Jesus they were talking about, right?
You know what time, right?
Okay. Remember now, this is the paper that JABARI scrolls through in that conversation, right? So let me continue. This letter explains the absence of those offensive passages from the editions of the Talmud published since the publication of the Amsterdam edition in 1644. But happily or unhappily, the Jews themselves have taken care that, quote, the expurgated passages in the Talmud did not become lost to their co-religionists by publishing them anonymously. Oh my God, anonymously in pamphlets. Thank you. Of which Professor Strack of Berlin mentions no less than 4 such editions. So they knew they were saying something crazy about Jesus. When they got pressed on it in the conference, homie was like, "Yeah, nah, that's some other Jesus." But the other Jews was like, "Nah, he's capping. It was Jesus." Right. And they removed those passages. But then they kept a little pamphlet with the actual things that they took out, and they kept them in circulation. But of course, we kept the file, as Lord Lux would say.
Right.
We kept the file.
No.
So now, in the Talmud Sabbath 104, we read, "He who cuts upon his flesh." It is a tradition that Rabbi Eleazar said to the wise, "Has not Ben Stada brought magic spells from Egypt and a cut which was upon his body?" They answered him, "He was a fool, and we do not take proofs from fools." Ben Stada is Ben Pendetta. Rob Hasida said, "The husband was Stada, the paramour was Bendetta, the husband was Paphos ben Judea, the mother was Stada. The mother was Miriam, the dresser of women's hair. As we say in Pumbithia, such a one has been false to her husband." Right now, this is a quote from the Talmud. Mind you, this is a paper quoting from the Talmud. It's not the Talmud. Right. And Jabari was using this. Right?
Right.
The two names, Ben Stada and Ben Pendetta, evidently refer to the same person. And that the person is who? Jesus.
That's right.
It's shown clearly by the fact that we sometimes meet with the full name Jeshu, son of Pendetta, also Jeshu, son of Stada. It seems that the question was argued in the schools which of the two familiar designations, son of Stada, son of Pendetta, was the correct one. Which of the two appellations appeared to be necessarily false, which was correct. So the argument they're making in this passage of the Talmud isn't how many Jesuses, it's what's the correct name for Jesus.
Interesting. Wow.
So it's not multiple Jesus, it's multiple names for Jesus. And which one's the right one, which is not. Again, this is the paper he shows in the video. All right, let's continue. It has already been shown above that Ben Stada denotes Jesus. In the passages before us, he is charged with bringing magical charms from Egypt concealed in an incision in his flesh. Brother Childs brought this up, that they said that he used witchcraft. He brings this up in this conversation. The charge that he was a magician is no doubt based on the belief that he did many miracles, a belief which found ample support in the gospel records. To say that Jesus learned magic in Egypt, the special home of magic according to Talmud Kedushin 449b, already referred to, is to say that he was a great magician, more powerful than others. Right? Again, they're not saying he doesn't exist. They're saying that, and they're not saying that he didn't have power. They're saying what he got his power from the magic of Egypt.
Right.
He called up Jesus by necromancy. Right? He's talking about this guy. He called up Jesus by necromancy. He said to him, "Who is honored in this world?" He replied, "Israel." "What about joining them?" He replied, seek their good, seek not their harm. Everyone who injures them, it is as if he injured the apple of his eye. He said, "What is the punishment of this man?" He replied, "By boiling filth. For a teacher has said, everyone who mocks at the words of the wise is punished by boiling filth. Come and see the difference between the sinners of Israel and the heathen prophets." They call up Jesus from the dead and ask him, "What's been going on with you, fam?" Like, well, I've been going through it. It's like, what you been going through? Boiling filth.
Boiling filth. It's wild.
The object of the group. Wow. The object of the gruesome story contained in this passage is to show the fate of the three chief enemies of Israel, i.e., Titus, Balaam, and Jesus. And although Jesus is made to regard the Jews as the chosen race, especially beloved, the apple of Yahweh's eye, yet his punishment seems to be the severest. Whatever that punishment was, we know not. At any rate, it expresses a hatred towards the most hated of all hated men. You don't hate imaginative figures.
Right.
Why waste your energy hating on, Papa Smurf or, Optimus Prime? These people don't exist. Right? All right. So now.
Yeah, they got energy for a dude who didn't exist.
Exactly. So here's the last part. Again, remember, this is the paper that Jabari is scrolling through, but doesn't really cite. And I think we see why he doesn't. In general. In general. Oh, man. I don't know, man. I don't know. But we're reading it, though. We're reading it.
Right.
In general, though not in detail, They serve to confirm the Christian tradition by giving independent and indeed hostile evidence that Jesus of Nazareth really existed. That's the point Brother Charles was making.
Right.
That's exactly the point. And then JABARI shows a paper that actually agrees with Brother Charles. But anyway, a fact that has been by some been called in question. But if beyond this, the Talmudic Jesus tradition has no value for the history of Christianity. It shows the attitude of Judaism as represented by its leaders towards Jesus. He is a deceiver, the sorcerer, the apostate, the sinner of Israel. His birth, Jewish contempt, blackened into a disgrace, and his death is dismissed as the mere execution of a pernicious criminal. And thus it is to this day. To understand Jesus and his religion, Judaism must divest itself from rabbinism. Not the Talmud, but the New Testament is the real source for the history of Jesus.
Wow.
So the author is saying, yeah, the Talmud, it's good to show that, that it's evident that they believe that Jesus existed. But that's not real history. They're just slandering him. Like, if you really want to know the historical Jesus, you got to go to the Bible.
Got to go to the source, dog. The Bible, right? Man,
So you get it?
Now, let me just say this, because I feel like this possibly presents a real problem for JABARI, because I see only three options here. Because I mean, as you pointed out, the article that he pulls up, the punchline is that if you want to know really what was going on with Jesus, you got to go to the New Testament. That's number one. But I think maybe even more poignant is that when it comes to those different names, they're not three different Jesuses. They're referring to the same dude, right? So he was trying to get, and I can't remember the pastor's name, but he was trying to,
Brother Charles.
He was trying to get Brother Charles on 2 points. Number one, he was trying to get him on how many Jesus are represented there. JABARI says 3, so clearly, even on the article that he cited, he was wrong about that, right? That's number one. Number two, he was trying to get Brother Charles on this idea of whether or not Charles had read the Talmud, right?
Right.
I guess somebody expected him to read the whole thing. So now, either when it comes to this article here, either JABARI is guilty of having not read this article in the same way that he was trying to get Brother Charles from not reading the Talmud, or JABARI did read this article and didn't understand what he read. Which I don't know which one of those is worse, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? Now,
but Adam, why show the actual paper but don't quote from it? He doesn't read it.
He didn't read it. I suspect that he didn't read it. Now, maybe he read it and forgot. If I wanted to be super charitable,
right,
maybe he read it and forgot. But it seems to me that he probably didn't read it. And if he did read it, he didn't understand it. Now, between those two options, I don't know which one of them is worse. But they seem to be pretty plausible to me. So I think that in his trying to get Brother Charles and get him hemmed up, he once again has cut himself in royal fashion.
You know what? Let me still man his argument.
Okay.
I think what he was trying to do is say, hey, you don't know the sources that you're trying to use for your argument. I do. Here's the example of those sources. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's what he was trying to do. But in doing so, you cut yourself.
Right. Right.
Because you didn't read it correctly, because you're talking about there's many Jesuses, but the paper that you show doesn't say that. The argument the rabbis are having isn't how many Jesuses, is which is the right name for this Jesus.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah. So you try to do a gotcha thing, and it backfired.
And for the record, I don't know Brother Charles. I mean, but he's in seeing that clip. I mean, he's right. Like, it was an asinine question, because he said he had read. He's repeated it several times that he had read the passages that he was referring to, and if he has not read the entirety of the Talmud, JABARI tries to make it seem as like, well, if you had read those passages, then you would know the answer to how many Jesus there are in the Talmud. But actually, Brother Charles is right. Like, he could know let's say that he did believe that there was 3 Jesuses based upon the passage he's read, he still wouldn't know necessarily how many there are mentioned in the whole Talmud. You know what I mean? So Brother Charles is right. Actually, matter of fact, and I think maybe more fundamental than that.
Actually, hold up, Adam. So let me just put this out here too. Let's say, because again, the Talmud is huge, right? Let's say there's another tractate somewhere in the Talmud where they're talking about multiple Jesuses. Okay. The paper you show, though, doesn't talk about that.
Right.
So he's still wrong.
Right. He's still looking bad. Right. And I don't know if Jabari is aware of this, but you know, Yeshua, it's a common name, bro.
Yeah.
I tell you, as a matter of fact, it wouldn't be surprising to me that if there were multiple quote unquote Jesus or Yeshuas in the Talmud, because there's multiple Yeshuas in the Bible. You have the book of Yeshua, in the Old Testament. That's clearly not the same as the first century figure who was crucified on the cross and resurrected. Right. So it was a common, it'd be like saying, do you know how many people named Sam there are in a particular region where you would expect to find a lot of people named Sam? It's a common name. So I don't know why, he feels like that's some sort of zinger. Now, what's key, particularly because they didn't have last names back then, by the way, they didn't have surnames, right? So you would have some sort of, so you look for context clues. So if somebody says Jesus of Nazareth, right? They're giving you, they're narrowing the scope of which Jesus they're talking about. Or when they're saying that, in Talmud, like he wasn't born of a virgin, he was born of like they're by context, you can discern which Jesus they're talking about or taking aim at, right? So like you don't have to, I don't think you even have to have a PhD to figure that out. But again, I don't believe, I'm trying not to call him a liar because I just generally don't do that. But I find it hard to believe that he carefully read that article that he posted because it cuts him several different ways. So I don't know why he would post that article as like a zinger against Brother Charles. That's crazy to me.
Right. So again, I mean, you showed the source, but if you would have read, right? Again, it's the critique that he uses on Brother Charles cuts him. If you would have read your sources, then you would have not tried to do a gotcha moment with Brother Charles because you got yourself.
You got got.
You got got. You did it to yourself.
And how many times have we said that about Jabari, bro? I feel like we've said that a lot. Like, there's been a lot of videos a lot of points made in this video and others where it's like he basically cuts himself, 5 different ways of Sunday. And it's funny. I don't know if you see in the chat, but D she said, which is why Jabari's common phraseology of quote, "I want you to understand," is found wanting. That's exactly right. It's like, bro, do you want us to understand? I don't know. Do you understand, Jabari? Because there's a lot of missteps here, bro.
The majority of our videos we've done, Jabari and others, is just this. They quote a source, we find the source, we read it in context, the source cuts them. It's wash, rinse, and repeat.
Right. I mean,
that's the bulk of our videos is that.
I'm not trying to like boast or build us up or whatever, but to be honest, like when it comes to Jabari and a number of different guys on Saturday, like these are the videos that are easiest to prepare for. Like it takes like little to no time, to prepare for these. So like when you hit me up on the text and be like, "Yo, man, let's review this," I'm like, "All right, cool. We can do it tomorrow." It don't even matter. All I got to do is find whatever source he used, read it in context, and then just make a slide out of it because I know he's gonna cut himself. It's that easy. And he does it all the time. It's not just him, but he just happens to be a frequent flyer in that regard. So
right.
I don't know.
So yeah, guys. I mean, but that we are here. The reason why we do this, and I feel like we always have to remind people, the reason why we're doing this, because we want to defend the gospel.
100%.
Right? When people make these kind of accusations and attack Christianity, Jesus, the Word of God, there has to be believers who will push back on those accusations. And obviously we're not the only ones, but it resonates in our heart to defend the gospel in this medium, in YouTube.
Right.
That's why we're doing this. It's not we're smarter than Jabari, or we have some sort of beef with Jabari, even though Jabari was talking a little chippy to Adam, but it's okay. It's all right. There's no animosity towards this individual with Jabari. But if you're going to say things that might cause people to not embrace the gospel, we're going to say something about it. Because without the gospel, people are lost. And we don't want people lost. We want people to come into right relation with Christ. That's why we do what we do. And anybody who tries to prevent people from understanding the gospel, then we have something to say about that.
It's a fact.
That's why we do it. I just want to remind everybody why we do this. So with that, Adam, final thoughts, sir.
Yeah, if I could just add, one piece to what you're saying, I believe in the gospel of the kingdom, of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I believe that Jesus has come to establish His kingdom. And in so much as we're representatives of the kingdom, we ought to be about human flourishing. And I think that for me, in my context, an aspect of promoting, and building up that, and I guess pushing for human flourishing has to do with the intellectual life. I don't believe that we can flourish as a people if we're ignorant. And so it bothers me when we see millions of people, on YouTube, TikTok, or whatever, feeding off of just lies, deception, and ignorance. You know what I mean? And so that angers me. I want to do something about that. And so again, it's nothing personal. I genuinely, I'm not mad. I don't have a problem with Jabari or anybody else on the platform or whoever. But I just don't. I can't sit idly by while people are being deceived. I just can't do it. Right. It just is what it is, man. So it's all love. Maybe I guess I just have to wait till he calls me out next time, man. I might fall back for a while. He says I got my hand in this bag of rocks. You know what I mean? He's waiting for me to.
Oh man, that dude's hilarious, man. But it's yeah, man. So it's definitely all love. It's definitely all love, man. We love Jabari. We want Jabari to come to Christ. I've said it before. I'm gonna say it again. Jabari would make an amazing Christian. He really would.
I agree.
Great oratory skills. He's scandal free, which is unfortunately very rare in that side of the fence. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah.
He's usually the grown up in most of those conversations that occur over there for the most part. You know what I mean? Sure. So we have a lot of love for Jabari, man. We really do. And Jabari, you need to come home, bro. You need to come home.
I mean, and here's the thing is that and just to, again, it's all about, I know we joke a lot and all that kind of stuff, but it's not like a vitriol kind of thing. Like when Jabari, going back to the debate with, what's his name? Vince Bantu, when we were in the planning phase of that, I was, as well as yourself, we were involved in the planning of that event. And there was a lot of names from the conscious community thrown around as to who could possibly be a debater against Vince Bantu. And one of the people that I voted for was Jabari, actually. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I thought that he would be a good match because he's able to conduct himself in a civil manner, And so while I do think that from in terms of the content of his information, I think that it's, fallacious 5 ways of Sunday. I do think that he's respectful, carries himself with dignity, and I think that's something commendable.
Absolutely,
and so,
absolutely.
And so there's no beef, there's no vitriol. I genuinely am praying for him, real rap. You know what I mean? And hope that he comes to know Christ.
Right. So yeah, man. So again, we're here to defend the gospel. Jabari, we love you, man. Sure. We want you to put your allegiance to Jesus. We really want you to do that. We want you to be our brother in Christ, man. At the end of the day, that's what we want. But until then, you keep coming with these critiques and accusations. We keep coming with the rebuttals. So, with that being said, BK Apologist, Adam Coleman, we out. Peace.